Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Comix Rant Mini. I'm your host, Arvin Bautista. And today's episode, we're going to talk about Dwellings by J. Stevens. This was a book that I borrowed from the library. I had no real idea what it was going to be about, but I think this cover kind of sums up a lot of things about it. It's like this cute horror anthology book. It's collected into this really nice hardcover published by Oni Press. And I know I've seen J. Stevens stuff before. I think he did a bunch of animation things, but I didn't realize he was primarily, or more known for his comic book stuff, which is great. Dwellings is really good. By the way, happy Halloween. I did not plan this, but it seems like it worked out just right, and I even picked the right book. All this is not planned, because that's how I roll. Anyway, this book, I guess he started working on in 2020. I kind of dug around because as I'm trying to do my own comic book stuff, I'm fascinated to see just how long people took to draw their stuff and, the stories of what they may have gone through to get things printed and which publisher they're through. Do they have an agent? Blah, blah, blah. And this was recent. So this was published, or this compilation is published 2024, but he started it as a Kickstarter campaign. It's 6 issues of this book called Dwellings, and I believe each issue is it's pretty hefty. It's 30 pages or more, actually. Here's the first chunk here. Oh, even more. There we go. So not 52. So it's probably 40 something. And then it has this intro here, which I think is for the book. And he's actually compiled this before and ran a Kickstarter and printed it that way. But this seems to be the more official, wide distribution kind of publishing thing. Anyway, the cool thing about this book, the hook is, okay, it's these cute characters. And they're in this horror setting, horror anthology setting, in this little town called Elwich, I believe. And the thing is, they will cuss, and they will do all these things that you don't associate with this style, this cutesy, clean line style. They will cuss, they will get maimed, violence ensues, killer crows are coming. And the cool thing I like about this book is it's in little short stories, and usually it's done in one issue, or whatever the horror theme is. It's almost like a Twilight Zone-y thing. But then some of the characters kind of show up because they're in the same town. And the first 2 issues are like that. You kind of see this happening. But they're not super intertwined. Maybe it will be by the end of the anthology. I haven't actually finished it. I've read the first, I think, 4 books. It's great. It's really good. And, he has all these old school ads that are in the books. And then it kind of what's cool is they're ads in the books, but then they're kind of tied into the story somehow. So obviously you see as raptors or become ravens, they're modern day dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff. And it's subtle. I think I wasn't really paying attention because my mind, as a regular comic book reader from back in the day, is to kind of blank out on the ads. I just don't read it. And I think it hit me on this one ad. I was all right, he just kind of had to knock me on the head with that. So in the second issue, these are cute. The ads are cute and kind of cool to see. But I wasn't really paying attention to them until the second issue, where this character has a very specific character design. And, there's all this, whatever the horror story is going on about this thing she's investigating. And then it says, you have to talk to the subject, eyes on the prize, D. She's talking to herself, her inner monologue. And turn the page. Expertly put into this side, on this side, so you can kind of, even though you're maybe like me, if you're blocking out these ads, even though you're going here, you're going to see this character who has a very distinctive character design as the character in the book. Blue hoodie, red jacket and blue cap, red jacket and a sweater. and then keep your eyes on the prize and track down your man, which is exactly what she was doing. And, once that hits, I'm like, oh, duh. Then I kind of like look back here and try to look at all these other ads, which are a lot more, I guess you could say subtle-ish. I guess that dinosaur one's not very subtle now, is it? You can see as I'm flipping through this just how great this book looks and how he can I appreciate how he can move fast, right? Because this is cartooning. But the stories are so great. They're so well told that it moves you along. And there is like some serious horror that starts kicking in here. And yeah, even though the gruesome's all like this weird, cute gruesomeness, it's a lot of the situational horror is great. Look at this guy. Gets his face stabbed with a knife through his mouth. Yeah, this episode is not for kids. This seems like I have a lot of these episodes that are not for kids. Yeah, definitely not for kids. I think I accidentally left this book open in the house and where my kids could see it, but fortunately it was like a fairly okay page. It wasn't too terrible. I was like, oh my gosh, they cannot be looking at this stuff. This is kind of crazy times. Anyway, so the first 3 issues have been great. The first 3 chapters, I guess, in the case of this book. And here's another one. This lady hands her a pamphlet, and then this is the pamphlet that's in there. Great stuff. But I like that it's all these different stories. They're all horror themed, and he can kind of do whatever he wants. And I like that about these anthologies. Like, he can kind of tell whatever story he wants, get it done one issue, and then leave. There's this great backup 1-page comic strip, I guess. I think Jay Stevens also does like local comic strips. I don't think I've ever read any of them, but I can imagine he kind of pulls from this. But it's kind of cool. So this character is like that old school trickster. I think it's kind of what Alan Moore pulls for Constantine-ish. And this character is kind of like just this really smart shyster that tricks the devil every time. So he kind of gets out of going to hell. And every comic strip is kind of set up this way. It's just in black and white, so he keeps it this way. And it looks great. It looks fantastic. His line work is always so nice looking. And yeah, there's cussing, like I said. And he will have these kind of ads in here too that kind of like add to the world building that he's kind of coming up with here. And you can't see it here, but I think there's like there might be some reproduced pages of this, but you kind of get a better flavor for what he was trying to go for when they were originally printed. These are all the alternate covers. You know what? I think I'm there. So you might. Oh no, not quite. But he has. I saw the prints of these. I'm not going to spoil this book for you. I saw the original copies of these books online, and it has the logo treatment, and they're kind of like this an old school look. I cannot seem to find a version of it here. You'll have to Google it. Sorry, my friends. You will have to Google it and figure it out. But it's great. It's kind of like these old Casper or is it Gold Key comics that used to do these. And even the yellowing of the cover is the same way. And I've always been trying to figure out a good way to kind of channel the things that I loved as a kid and then bring them back and in horror format, I guess. Like because I love Twilight Zone, the old black and white serial. That I'm always like, oh, you know what? That would be easy, quote unquote, for me to do, like one shot. Strange, mysterious stories, and Jay Stevens pulls it off here without a problem. But yeah, that's not right. Sorry, I'm just flipping through this, and it's like all this horror is going on while I'm just ranting. But enjoy some of these pages. I'm glad I picked it up. So there's like these ads are great. So I actually, when I went to the library, there was another book that was kind of set up in the similar vein. I don't know, it must be some kind of storytelling zeitgeist that everybody's seeing. So in this third issue is where he kind of starts pulling these connections more. The second issue, okay, here's an example here. So the first issue is this kid with the blue hair, and then this police officer, chief, or not chief, a sergeant or something like that, or detective, sorry, it shows up, you know, and then the story plays off. People die, dogs die, scissors are involved. This lettering's great. They're really great. How it's kind of like going all over the panels and kind of crowding it. Same here, right? It's like loud. The sound of crows. You know, nothing is spared. Gore is not spared here. Anyway, so that was the first issue, and then the second chapter, second chapter, we kind of follow a pretty different set of people for the most part until she talks to the police, in which we see that detective again. So subtle, cool, right? In this third issue, though, he really brings it along because there's again different characters, different setting, but this character actually runs into the character from the first book. This does not show up there. You kind of just see this, so it kind of like informs you of the state of mind of this character, and we can kind of see like, oh, someone was actually watching this guy as the first issue was going on, but she sees something extra. So that was more like a direct like line to me, like of story getting connected to another story. But she has her own thing, you know, she promptly walks away and all this kind of stuff. And then in this story, there are certain things, she walks through a forest and there's certain things here that are shown that I don't think are directly just in this story. They might be foreshadowing other stories. Or I don't know, like, you know, it's just got, you know, bloody tooth, like maggots, some Christmas tree that's decorated. You know, it's kind of like these cool little things that makes you go, what is that about? Let me keep reading. And, you know, there's some very cool coloring going on here too that works just right for him. And he can throw in things like this. Oh, okay, sorry. So I got thrown off. But the other anthology book that was kind of like this, I might end up reading it one of these days. It seemed pretty cool. It had this retro style, a little bit more realistic, but then, you know, it has like these short stories in between, kind of like these things that fill in, and ads and papers that are written and so on. So maybe because there's a lot of text that my brain just kind of shuts off, but in the way Jay Stevens uses it here with these ads is perfect for me. Like I become curious, you know, like you don't actually have to read all this, but I become curious because it starts informing the story that I'm reading, but it's also obviously not a prerequisite. He starts doing things that are more surreal, right? This person's falling, and this is one of my favorite stories so far. They're all really good, to be honest, but I think because he plays with perspective shift, yeah. Dead people. Okay, so I will stop here so I do not spoil the rest of this book for myself and for you. But in any case, that is Jay Stevens' Dwellings that we get to look at today. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, but I'm just going to keep flipping through some of these. Hope you guys browse. I like browsing books, guys. I will read anything and everything that is in comic book format, or I will give it a shot. So there might be some other strange episodes that are coming up here, but I hope you enjoyed browsing through Jay Stevens' Dwellings, and have a happy Halloween. And I will see you guys in the next episode of Comix Rant.